What's up?
Yeah, yeah,
We
dude.
haven't
Yeah,
we haven't seen this in a hot minute.
I know. Yeah. Well, we've had some stuff going on. But I think after the new year, we'll talk about this offline. We don't have to go ramble
Sure.
on about this. But I've got some ideas for the new year. Um, because unless we set up the infrastructure around us to like promote things, we're just not going to do it because we just do we promote too many other things. You know what I mean? And this is just kind of like where we hang out for an hour
Enough.
a week.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
and
at least I think the nice thing is that like more than like one or two people happen to watch this, and it's actually a fair
yeah,
amount.
no, it's cool.
Indeed,
It's cool.
everybody who does happen to want to listen to us for whatever reason, an hour and a.
Yeah,
But yeah, I do agree. Like our best live show versions have definitely. We talked about this. Like our best episodes were always the ones that either were very well planned beforehand, like at least
yeah,
promotion, or they were the ones that were just like straight up off the cuff and it happened to be aligned with like a really hot topic. Um,
yeah. Matt
but
Matt
definitely,
Matt Safalowski's or dude, I don't know how to say his last name.
I'm not sure.
Salevsky.
Yeah, I
That
think so.
is if I have his name spelled right in my phone.
Oh, that
He's
could
gonna
be it.
he's gonna come on. The first thing we'll do is we'll have him here. Where's the link here? Hold on. Let me stream this. I gotta stream this to my audience.
Good idea. Also, I want to check if
Where's the link? How do I get the link? Do I just send the link in the URL?
yeah.
Paste. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna just check on LinkedIn here. We're actually streaming because the last time that we did this, I think it was with Andrew Silver.
And we
Also,
weren't.
I feel like we weren't, but maybe we are. Hold on. Oh, we're actually almost at 60,000 followers on officially on Great Caviar, which is pretty sweet. Okay, I don't see anything posting here, which is great. Fantastic.
I think it's. Hold on, let me look. Everything's busted. People are saying that people are talking in the comments. There's guys on. There's only on Twitter though, I guess.
It is on. Okay, it is live on LinkedIn, but we're doing this. We're doing it a little bit differently. So we in StreamYard we didn't create an event for this. So the studio, when you go into the studio and you just start it up, it literally doesn't have a title, even though it asks you for one. So this is a little bit annoying, but it's okay.
Whatever. Is it on there?
It's on there at least, yeah. So
All right. What? Who cares?
we'll figure it.
Dude. So the reason why I wanted to bring on Matt is because Matt's an interesting dude. I don't think we've had him on.
I've met him. He came to the Freight Caviar
Yeah,
during
no,
the.
I mean, I'm sure you've definitely met him. I mean, he comes to a lot of events, but last time I was with him, we were talking about like the weather and a bunch of like weird stuff. So, but anyway,
Like
I
the
want to talk
typical
about AI.
type of stuff.
No, no, like weird stuff, weird stuff. But dude, I subscribed to Perplexity yesterday because I've been using it a lot. And do you use
Okay.
it?
I've been using it for I don't know, almost a year now.
Dude, I mean, it's crazy.
It's amazing. I love Perplexity. I if I need any sourced like with links and URLs, it's just 100% go to Perplexity.
I don't understand. Like, it's just driving me. It's just kind of driving me a little crazy.
Why?
Like, because you just have to be. It's such a cheat code to use some of this stuff sometimes. Like some
Yeah.
of the, and really anytime you have like a repetitive task like that you do in your day, I feel like you can figure out a way to make it less annoying.
Yep.
And I've just been trying to apply that to like everything that I do, and
Don't
it's been
overdo it. Don't overdo it. Oh, Matt's here too. What's up, Matt?
Hello, how are you guys?
Good, man.
what up, dude?
We don't do it like don't over engineer your your personal operations, because then it's just going to get too taxing to maintain it all.
No, then Robot Reed is gonna take over the world, bro.
Yeah, Droid Reed. Matt, how
Matt,
much
what
do you how much do you automate out of your day?
Uh,
Are you like a
I do a lot. So
manager?
I've got a tab that's just Chat GPT, and it helps me just like I use it a lot to help like think,
Yeah.
because
You too.
it's a good like sparring partner in terms of just like thinking about stuff.
Anyway.
Like when I'm writing a link, but like you got to be kind of careful because um like every week now I'm writing a LinkedIn post about a random commodity, and it's just kind of wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
And so it'll tell, like, for example, there's like these codes that identify commodities, and I'll be like, well, what's the code for like chocolate chip cookies? And it'll tell me the code, but then I go look at the real documentation and it's just wrong. And so
Wrong.
you got to be really careful with just like blindly trusting what it tells you.
Do you or does Marvin write most of the code for you guys?
Marvin writes most of the code. I do write some of the code. I do write some of the code.
Let's go.
And what do you use? Which one do you use for code?
So we actually built the freight wrapped with Bolt, and we were talking about this
Yeah.
yesterday, and we're like, could we have built freight wrapped by hand faster? And I think the answer we got to was like probably. Um, but
Really?
but it's not like meaningfully slower, and you kind of like use a different part of your brain when you're
It's
using
very
Bolt
different.
versus like when you're
I've never
coding.
used Bolt. What even is
There's
that?
Bolt,
I've never used it.
there's Cursor, there's Windsurf. Now there's
Is it an
Devin.
IDE?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like an ID.
yeah. It's like we use Cursor a lot too. Cursor is more of like an IDE than Bolt is.
I use
Yeah,
Cursor.
Bolt.
Cursor is like my default fallback for pretty much everything.
Create a
But
doc site with byte press. Oh, cool. I see.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try out probably Devin here in the next couple.
Oh yeah, Devin was
Is
released.
that released?
It was
Yeah,
released
officially.
this
Yeah,
week.
it's
Yeah.
$500 a month. But it's basically I looked at the reviews from it so far, and it's essentially the equivalent of a junior developer. So you can ask it to do like relatively straightforward kind of lower level chore tasks, like
Yeah.
let's do like just clean up the code, add comments, add tests, things like that. So, but I think one of the things that I've been talking about with a couple of people recently, which I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on, was this general trend that we're seeing right now, which is how the cost of software development in general is just literally taking a big plummet. What do you guys think? And just obviously, since this is like Break on Friday, what do you guys think in terms of like this technology now being available to everybody to use in 2, 3, 4, 5 years? What does this look like in terms of every brokerage having the ability to literally, essentially?
Dude, I think this could potentially contribute to flipping this whole narrative, which I think is stupid, that brokerages shouldn't build their own technology. All the people who say that are the tech bros trying to sell them stuff. I understand though. I understand why you would say that. And again, I've never built brokerage technology. I've only, been a carrier rep, so I can't really, and I've never run a brokerage, so I can't speak to that. But like I just feel like my experience using proprietary technology built by a brokerage themselves at Echo was like it was super dialed in, like for specifically for the exact job that I was doing.
Exactly.
It was awesome. It was awesome. It was so dialed in with like keystrokes and like.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I think I hear that.
And,
I hear that like.
But the main difference is going to be
Reed, you're cutting out, I think.
the main difference is going to be that in the future, and can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yeah,
You're
we can hear
cutting
you.
out, or you're delayed or something.
No?
I don't know.
God damn it.
We can hear. Oh,
Anyway,
He
the main
can't hear
difference
us.
is just going to be the main difference is going to be that that there's less general people, a lot of automation. Anyway, let me reset my stream. I'll be right back.
All right. Yeah, just to like build off what Reed said a little bit. You do hear like a lot of people say like either build technology or move freight. Don't do both. And
Yeah.
I think that to me, my perspective of that is like I think that applies to brokerages that are building technology and then trying to like resell it.
Well,
So you like there's a bunch of TMSs that are like, yeah, this broker built their own TMS and they're trying to like monetize it as opposed to just like building your own TMS and keeping it for yourself. I think
those are two different
that's
things. Yeah, those are kind of two different things. The way I look at it is like, I mean, let's just take Convoy for example, right? Like, let's say that if Convoy or any of those platforms didn't exist, and we kind of just pushed the timelines back by like 3-4 years, essentially, or 5 years, and with the tooling that's available to, build software now, much cheaper, would have a company like Convoy worked out because mainly a big bulk of their operating expenses was engineering. So if
Bro,
engineering,
of course it would have worked out.
right? So like it was.
They had such a massive upfront investment. Am I better, by the way? Am I better?
you're great. You're great.
Okay. Not to say that the only thing that sunk them was their high development costs, of course. So it's very difficult to say whether it would have worked or not, just to be clear. But like it's they had such a massive upfront investment from a tech standpoint. And if that investment cost is like 75% or 25% of what it was, I mean that would have substantially potentially changed everything.
Well,
Yeah.
I think I think there is a misconception about like what engineers do all day as well sometimes. Like I think folks think they're just like writing code, pounding it out, but it's not just about writing code. It's like writing the right code or figuring out like what the right like writing design docs. That's something that I've experienced at every tech company I've been at. Doing really diligent like code review, making sure that whatever you're deploying is is good enough, or hopefully good, and a lot of debugging, responding to user feedback. And so, like when I think about the time, like the average day of a software engineer at one of these tech companies, I would say like it's like 20% code, 80% everything else. So I think most people believe that it's like 80% code, 20% everything else, which is why you think like, okay, well, we can take that 80% of time that they're coding and just automate it. It really only is like 20 to 30% that I think is really able to be.
But think about think about beyond just the engineers too. Think about the people who surround them.
Yeah.
Like the product managers, the designers, the marketers who are looking at user behavior in the customer journey and understanding, how to influence and how to the thing about funnels, the thing about how to get people to conversion quicker, and all of that necessarily trickles down to what the product actually looks like, right?
I think maybe what you'll see is like more like the ability for companies to have more diverse product offerings. More so than like because you're right, like there's a lot of overhead that can certainly be automated, like write me a marketing campaign for this thing, and it gets you, it's a really big head start. That said, like what I've always experienced is that for better for worse, like the marketing people are like not the blockers. The product people are also kind of running ahead of engineering, and so it's really about like how fast engineers can crank out high quality working code. And I think one of the big challenges in freight specifically is essentially enabling engineers to have the context they need to make the right decisions, and that's really hard because
if you bring in somebody out of industry.
But hold on, let's but just going back to their initial question before I lagged out, like what's going to happen? Like, are brokerages all of a sudden going to be able to build all their own stuff? Like,
Yeah. So my take on this is that they will be able to. The question for me that's outstanding so far is, where is this base level of knowledge about how these systems work going to come from? And once that becomes available, then something like a ChatGPT gets trained on that open data on the internet, as to like what are all the building blocks of that a TMS needs. I'm pretty sure there's probably, if you asked it right now, there's probably some spec out there somewhere, right? Like maybe it just read API docs and was able to kind of interpret like what are all the functionality that a TMS should be able to do, or whatever other piece of software it is, CRM or anything, right? Like, and then basically build you the foundational building blocks, spin up a database, all that stuff right now is possible, right? It's just that it comes with some quirks here and there, and you definitely 100% still need a software engineer to like look at it, review it, see what it's doing, add to it. You still need that knowledge, but fast forward 5 years from now, it's like, well,
dude, I just think that every single assumption that we make is not a safe assumption to make on a 10-year time horizon. I just don't think that.
well,
and that's like, maybe that's an outrageous statement, but like
Well,
maybe
no,
I'm overstated.
I think that's. I mean, if I could predict the future, then I'd be a very wealthy person. So like, yeah, if you were to rewind 10 years, I don't think you would predict that we'd be talking about this right now.
No, God, no.
all I think that is actually, the only thing that you can actually really go off of is that the trend is the cost of software development is plummeting, like dramatically, right? And given that that's the trend, what can take place as a byproduct of
It's just giving everybody what used to be a tool, or like writing code, building stuff used to be reserved for a select portion of people. And if you wanted to put an idea out into the world in the form of a software product, you had to find your coding, person. And everyone, like, oh, Jake's in the comments here. I met Jake talking about crypto on Twitter, and like 3 years ago, and we just started working together basically because I was like code curious. I knew enough to be like able to blow my foot off, you know what I mean? But like I could stand something up, and then he comes in and cleans stuff up, and it like actually knows what he's doing and has the product experience and all that stuff. But like, imagine if everyone could easily like had instant access to that, with somebody, not only somebody who knows everything about writing software, but knows everything about product development and all that goes into that, and can understand features in real, like can understand usage in real time and be suggesting a roadmap based on how people are actually using the product, and going and doing market research and looking at all your competitors at the same time and comparing them to what you're building and finding a slot in the market for you. I mean, it's crazy. It's literally crazy. Like,
well, I mean, I guess like, does it make everyone jacks of all trade and masters of none? And
I don't think so.
Do you need?
No.
I don't know either. But yeah, I think it's a good point. Like, but I do think that people need to be naturally curious about doing it, because like you still have to like figure out how to click through AWS to configure your stuff right. You have to like know how a database kind of works, sort of. And so there is some base level of curiosity that and like initiative that someone needs to actually really
You have to be able to ask the right
advantage of it.
question. I mean, right now, you have to know how to stitch everything together. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if you use V0 to crank out a Next.js front end, you know what I mean? You still have to know how to deploy it. You still have to know how to use GitHub. You still have to. I mean, you're probably going to abstract that all away. Long term.
Actually, GitHub's a good. I don't know if I could ask ChatGPT how to use GitHub and it would, or like Git, and it'd be good. I haven't actually tried it. I'll be curious to know how well a cursor or whatever knows how to use Git.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna replace the need for engineers. I'm experiencing it personally myself, and Matt, you can probably speak to this too, which is I can just do a lot more than I was able to do 2 years ago. Like a
Yeah.
significantly
Yeah.
more amount,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we're only about 2 years into it. So if you just keep going another 2 years, another 2 years after that, it's basically just going to be a multiplier for an engineer, and that
Yeah.
going to keep getting bigger and bigger. So
Yeah.
at that point, right, it just goes with the same trend I was saying, like about the cost of software development is going to plummet. And I think Samantha Jones like was commenting here, like brokerages don't want to build their own stuff. But if you think about why they don't want to build their own stuff,
Why do they keep doing it then? I don't. I
well,
mean,
so like the contention there around that topic is always like, do you like you don't have the resources as a brokerage with the margins that business makes to justify those costs, and it's a pretty big undertaking to go in and build your own software. But if it's no longer a big barrier to entry to build that software, why wouldn't you start to build that in-house? Or at least if you can go off some building blocks, I don't know, let's say like there's an open source foundation that you can start off with, right? Like basic building blocks of a load builder or I don't know, document processing, whatever it is. It will basically just be allowing you to customize the way that your interface and your process internally in the company works. It's like,
dude, I think one assumption we're making here is that brokerages are going to look the same in 10 years. You know what I
they
mean?
won't. I'm not
Like
making that assumption.
they will not even be anywhere close, and I just don't think they will be. I mean, look, we might be overstating like the timeline here. I mean, who knows what a real time, and who knows what it's actually going to look like in 10 years? Maybe this is just, we're blowing smoke right now, but like, I don't know, dude. All of literally all a brokerage is just like just a way of routing freight. You know what I mean? And like humans are just doing the making the decisions and communicating, and it's just like it just does not have to be that way. Like
Cool.
Way more.
I would love to chat more about
what are you
AI,
gonna leave?
right? I gotta go. I've got a broker to talk to.
Hopefully they weren't listening to us saying that they should be building their own shit.
I'm actually in 2 StreamYards right now. Cool.
Cool.
Thanks
All
for
right,
having me.
you go close it, Matt. You know what, dude? Let me invite.
I just sent Garrett a link. I don't know if he's gonna be
Oh
free.
yeah, Garrett would be good. Good replacement for me. See you guys.
See ya.
I'm gonna see if Jake wants to come on too. We can just talk about code shit. But anyway, dude, it's like it's I mean, there's this is all interesting stuff. I don't know the answers. But
I don't think there is no clear answer as to what it's gonna like look like 5 years from now. I just know that I know from a year from now, I'm going to be able to personally be able to get done even more than I am able to get done today, which is already like 5 to 6 times more than I was able to get done 2 years ago. So
100%.
And as long as that keeps trending, it's like, well, I mean, I don't know, like if brokerages are in the same or similar form that they are, which honestly with Happy Robot like or related type of products, like things can change quite quickly. So I would say that, I could very easily, what I'll say is this, I could very easily see brokerages just bringing on a single developer and being like, hey, build me a prototype TMS and let's just see where this goes. It's just so much cheaper to do. It's going to be so much cheaper to do that. It's not going to cost $1 million or $5 million to build it. It's going to cost you, I don't know, probably 1, 2, 3 months of salary, 24,000, like $50,000.
Yeah. I mean, there's still going to be. I think still people definitely will still buy products. You know what I mean? And you just never know what a TMS company might like. Somebody who actually builds a TMS, what they might do. Maybe they like. Maybe like TMSs build into them the ability to like use AI to build new features for yourself on top of it.
I was
Because
joking
building,
about.
because really there's not that many different. I mean, well, I say this with no knowledge of how TMSs are actually built, so forgive me. But like they like you need loads, you need some notion of carriers, you need some notion of load carriers on loads, you need some notion of warehouses and locations. Like these are all just the basic building blocks of like what goes into these tools, and you need to be able to update loads, you need to be able to add new loads,
Yep.
right? And so that doesn't really change much broker to broker. It might, their workflows might change, but like that base layer, like if you had that, and then you could be like, okay, well, I really need a load board that I can send to my carriers. You know what I mean? Like you could that's just a look at the base layer. You know what I mean? And you could just customize that all on your own using tools on top of the TMS. So maybe somebody adds like a way to build your own stuff. That'd be cool.
I actually.
What's up, Garrett?
What's up,
So,
Garrett?
so guys,
Garrett, what do you
lot
think?
to unpack on this one, huh?
Yeah, long time back.
Totally.
Garrett, what do you think? Do you think there would be software that you're using, and then one day that software within itself will allow you to basically build your own software, which is kind of like a module on top of it? Like I was thinking about this the other day, which is if you really take a reference point for does this already exist in a way, like think of like Replit. Like we all used Replit to like do like some lost freight Discord stuff. It's literally the concept is like something like Replit. Like Replit
Yeah.
hosting software, inside of itself that you want to build, and the concept, like in essence, I think exists. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, we already have like workflow engines inside of a TMS. I think that would just be kind of like a next step almost, right? Of like a workflow engine that's not just a workflow engine, but can also build on top. But I think the tricky thing will be, if it's not an open source TMS, then how do you keep your source code essentially secure? And I think that would be pretty tricky. So
I'm all for open source TMS.
Yeah, we need an open source TMS. But I mean, like to Reed's point, what he was talking about a minute ago, the core of what a TMS is hasn't really changed, and really the tools for a broker haven't really changed all that much. They've just improved, but the core of what you're doing is pretty much the same. I was just looking through a bunch of old FreightWaves articles actually, like this week, just out of curiosity's sake, just like what insights could you kind of gather out of like 5 years ago? What were we talking about?
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
it was like shocking. It's like you could take those articles and like copy paste them to 2024 and like change some company names around, and it was like the exact same. Like I was like, I just went in no expectation, just purely like curious, and I was like shocked.
AI keyword or something?
Yes, AI freight broker, truck parking, cross border, nearshoring.
Yeah.
There's companies that are doing that. 2019 launching, raising money. I was just like, that's really interesting. Now, obviously, 2020 was a curveball. Like, I think it's hard to totally read into the cycle there and like necessarily know if we're going to repeat it. But I think it does speak a lot to like that core. What is a TMS? What is a broker doing? Has really not changed all that much. Maybe some of their tools have made it easier, higher performing, more efficient. But what you're doing day to day is like roughly the same. And I think there's still space for sort of a next generation of TMS. We've talked a lot about like what does a broker look like in 10 years, 5 years, 15 years? A lot of the stuff we were talking about in 2019 was very similar about like it's going to be automated. We're gonna digital freight brokerages. We have all the tech. We're going to connect the pieces, touchless freight, and we're sort of doing the same thing now with AI brokerage, essentially, right? It's really just like the same idea. I think it's sort of like missing the point a little bit in that a lot of the problems we had back in like 2019, I think we still have them today. AI is still really great, and being able to like build your own code and like being able to like have communications through email and voice is awesome. Huge milestone, like definitely a huge unlock. But I don't think it was like the missing piece to fully automate AI brokerages. There's still too much of that human piece of it where AI is not good enough to autonomously handle exceptions yet.
Correct.
Like, and when it gets there, that's like that's going to be like, I think the big unlock for, okay, now we can really automate a brokerage. I'm not saying it's not going to be a lot more efficient and better, but to fully automate, we need to hit that. And when you look at how you get to that point, we really have to figure out it's almost like almost hitting AGI status, where we need an AI that's able to self-reinforce without like recursively going down like the path of like self-destructing. We need to learn how to train an AI, put it in a situation where it understands, like, if you don't book this load, you miss the load falls out, the shipper doesn't pay you money, the company loses money, and the AI needs to understand that, connect the context, learn, and then improve on its own the next time without a person being involved. And we're not quite there yet. But yeah.
That's literally, I mean, just to be clear though, like the mechanism you just described is literally just what the human does. You know what I mean? Like all like a carrier sales rep does is like take in information and respond to it, usually by communicating with somebody. You know what I mean? And then as they're doing it, they're manipulating fields in a database. You know, like that's it. Like that's what they do.
The way
but I mean, the situations get complex and they're multivariate, and there's an understanding of human emotion involved and human incentive oftentimes, and you're working with imperfect information. So it's kind of a gray, it's just a kind of a black box. And that's why humans are still good at it, or better at it, I should say, or, you know, in aggregate. But like, there's just no reason why that couldn't change. There is no reason.
There's
like
literally the same thing as why people are still, for the most part, still driving cars, right? Like exception management in driving is a very, like, to me, it's very similar conceptually speaking, right? But the only way that that's actually now being solved is like Tesla basically figured out a way to source just a crazy amount of driving scenarios. And like, how do people handle those exceptions? And they just cast this in like huge net on the world. And like, this net is basically capturing like every possible, you know, scenario as much as possible, essentially like capturing all the entropy in the world. Entropy is really like the ultimate boss battle for like human exception management, right? It's like the unknown of everything that can go wrong in the world. And the better you can kind of like estimate what can go wrong, the more likely it is that you'll actually be able to manage exceptions like with a decreased amount of risk. I think, like, I mean, at least for me, this is how I always think about this whole brokerage automation piece, which is that the way Tesla builds self-driving is that it's minimizing the risk of injury. It's not like minimizing accident likelihood or anything like that. It's just simply minimize at every single point in time the chance that somebody gets injured significantly. So whoever that is, inside the car or outside the car, right? And in the business sense, if you're doing a brokerage, it's like minimize the amount of dollars lost. That's essentially what you need to optimize for.
I think the trick is that brokerages have a long time operated in like sort of that niche, like that relationship piece. I know it's like, you know, beating a dead horse on this with like, oh, it's relationship based, but there is a lot to say about like, if you have an automated brokerage that drops the ball in this spot, doesn't give quite a good rate, that human brokerage can swoop in and take that deal. And now like that, like automation is sort of lost. And so I think that's why it'll be hard. Every brokerage will have the opportunity to compete with every brokerage. This isn't like everybody wants to drive on the road. This is like everybody wants to make more money than the next guy, right? So I think it's a little different on that side of things, but I do think you're right as far as exception management and how that's comparable. The way I see it, where we're at right now, there's sort of like two categories people fall into. You're going to apply AI. You either have a workflow that's really well defined and it's really repeatable and you don't need AI because you know exactly what's going to happen and there's like only a couple edge cases, or you don't have a workflow defined well enough and the AI is just not good enough to drop into a situation where you can't put guardrails on it. So until we can plug an AI in and it can really learn from context and know when to follow the workflow, when to follow the rules, and when to actually break them, like, we're not quite there yet, but when we get there, that's when we will be, okay, now we can start handling these exceptions successfully. But that is going to be different business to business. It's not like following the rules on the road, right? Like some businesses literally just operate differently. And so I think that's sort of where it's a little bit more complicated. There are parallels, but I think that's why it's going to be harder to just automate a brokerage in comparison.
Yeah, there's no task by any means, and it's not happening soon. So
yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting to think about. I don't I'm obviously there's a significant counterparty we're leaving out of this discussion, which is like the carriers, um, and I'm just curious, like, I don't know. I mean, I think there's probably going to be a new generation of carriers that come up over the next couple, over the next decade that are really like dialed in with interfacing with broker, like the Convoy, the new Convoy platform, like Uber Freight. I mean, all the big brokerages have their own marketplaces now, and it's going to be interesting to see how that side of the equation adapts to this change, and what benefits potentially or downsides it brings to them.
Have you seen anything, Reed, that like made you think about how things might change on the carrier side?
Not really. No. Not really. I think I haven't looked very hard. So, maybe, but I think naturally there's going to be less people working on that simply because of the sales landscape. It's very difficult to sell to small carriers. So it makes sense why this is starting with brokerages. Because that's kind of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. Not to say it's easy, but it's much easier than selling to carriers because there's less brokerages, and they sit at their computers all day and they spend money on software. So it makes sense that they're being sold to first. But
So-
I do think that like there's a whole side of this coin for carriers where you talk about like an agent, for lack of a better term. I mean, I guess that is the term, so maybe there is no lack of term, but like I don't know what an agent for carriers would look like, and how does it interface with the agent for a brokerage? You know what I mean? Like obviously, like if you can, a big question mark in the edge cases is how a carrier communicates, a carrier, a driver, a dispatcher communicate what's going on, right? Like, because if load partner is expecting an update to a load in a certain format, or in a list of formats, and then it's like slightly outside of even that, then those guardrails are gone that you just described, Garrett. But if you could do it in such a way where the information coming from the other side, from the carrier side, is structured in a predictable way, then because they're assisted by their own version of this tech, then that's going to make it much more possible to do all the things you're describing, Garrett, because there will naturally be less edge cases. The edge cases aren't in the actual scenarios themselves, really. Like the scenarios that occur, the exceptions on a load, for example, or the exceptions when you're talking and negotiating booking a load, there aren't that many. Like there's different flavors of them all, right? And there's a million different ways a shipper or a receiver could tell a driver that why they're not getting unloaded, or what the issue is if there's no point. I mean, there's just not that many of those, like how the information is communicated to the broker could be a million different ways. Maybe some guy, is like, no appointment. That's all they say. Or like, I'm not on the schedule, or whatever, right? But there's the scenario, like when you boil it down, is pretty basic. Like it's not that crazy. So if you can normalize the communication of those exceptions, then all of a sudden the job of the broker agent becomes much simpler, and the guardrails are much easier to build. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think like AI is really good at being a translation layer, which again, I think it's like this is a huge milestone, no doubt, right? And being able to like make these different businesses, like talking about like AI voice as a like way to integrate companies almost, because like you don't have to have a tech team, right? Everybody's got phones. I think there's a lot there, but I still don't think that's really the full unlock. The unlock it's not like the problem isn't that there's only so many scenarios. It's how do you recover out of those scenarios? Like the way that somebody covers a fallout is going to be very dependent. And there is a whole bunch of ways that they're going to do that depending on relationships, who they know, who they don't want to work with, how important is this customer. All those things play in, and that's where I think the complexities come in, is actually like not necessarily just like knowing we had a fallout, but how do you actually recover out of it?
Yeah, sure. That makes sense.
I think, maybe that's a good case to your point, Garrett, about why the human element will remain in a brokerage for a really long time. And if you kind of compare it to like how software development is starting to look, at least to me, I can get more done like with the tools that we have, but it's also allowing me to basically take a step up and out right? And get a better holistic picture of like what else I can do at the business to kind of plan better, make better strategic decisions. And I still need to talk about that with multiple different people. And there's that, I don't know, how do you describe it? Like, it's kind of like that pre-planning or planning element of the business where people are kind of, I would still say, needed, and it's context dependent on the customer's needs, like you said.
Yeah.
Which
I
makes
mean,
sense, I guess.
Yeah, like I think kind of two pieces. Like the tools are going to improve things. Like AI. I'm not trying to say AI is like not that big a deal. Like it's still huge. Like it's going to make things way better. You're going to do a lot less of like handling, knowing, monitoring your inbox and your text to see that somebody's late. You're just going to get like that escalation straight to you, so you don't have to like see all the messages. It's going to make you be able to do those kinds of things. And the second piece of that is, I think, talking about jobs and like how they look in the future. I really believe that long term AI is going to take care of a lot of these smaller things, or just technology in general. And we're going to create new jobs working on harder problems long term in situations like that, where it's like, I don't have to be in that day to day of like communicating to the carrier as much now. So now I can take a step up and, okay, now big picture, like let's look at like how are we actually utilizing our carriers, like different things that you didn't have time for, how possible. So that's how I think, like, again, we'll just, jobs will change and we'll work on harder problems now.
What's up, Jake?
What's going on,
Jake,
guys?
what's good, bro? What's Jake? You've been listening somewhat, I assume. What is your in the last 8 minutes we have here? What's your impression of this
I think I'm pretty close to where Garrett's saying what he's been saying, and a lot of what Christian's been saying too. Like for me in my day to day, it's just a tool. Like it's not replacing my job, but it is making me more efficient.
Explain what your job is.
So I'm a software engineer at Hinge. I'm a senior engineering manager on the iOS app. So I manage a team of iOS engineers. So the majority of my day is mostly people management, but I do get my hands into the code from time to time. And so for me, it actually helps because I might not always be the sharpest because I'm not looking at the code every single day. So it's a handy tool for me to like kind of like what Matt was saying at the beginning. It's like it's a really good sparring partner to like ask questions and help you think. So for me, like where I would have I previously would have just been on Stack Overflow or Google or somebody's blog. Now it's just like I'm just feeding questions into ChatGPT and it's helping me come to answers faster.
The realization that there was this one point of realization that I had about how it's going to change things from a development workflow perspective was we had a kind of intern contractor who came with us for like 2-3 months, and I gave him access to GitHub, and within one day he basically was able to understand and make both front end and back end changes. And that's something that, generally speaking, like somebody who's not familiar with the code base would have not happened that fast. When you
that's just speaking to how good of an engineer you are. I mean, it must have just been such clean and easy to understand code, right?
Maybe that's part of the case too. But he asked me like, how did you like figure out like what endpoints to use or whatever, right? And he's like, I just like asked cursor chat, and I just asked it, hey, explain how this code works and the different pieces of it, and all of a sudden it just became super clear to me. I'm like, wow, okay, this is just a force multiplier for onboarding, making progress, all this stuff, which is crazy. So
Jake, are you hiring engineers, right? Like is the pace of hiring going to slow for software engineers in these big companies?
I don't think so. No. I mean, that's kind of the thing too that you guys were talking about earlier. It's like, oh, this is going to make software development so much cheaper. I'm like, well, maybe, but probably not yet. Like, I think there's still a fair amount of time before that's probably realized.
I should rephrase. I should say what I mean is that per unit of output will become cheaper to produce, but that doesn't mean that it's going to minimize the amount of people you bring onto your team, because if you can get more,
how could it not reduce the amount of people? Like I feel like I hear all these dudes talking about that.
I look at all
these companies.
I look at it more as you can do more
Of course, yeah. Well, naturally, I
It's
mean,
not
yeah.
gonna cause me to want to hire less people because we're just going to be able to do more as a company, and like you're still going to have like as things get bigger, you're definitely going to need people reviewing.
Yeah, I mean, maybe at a startup level, it requires less people to get things off the ground. But I think at the enterprise level, I don't think that will be realized for some time because the input to software development is massive. Like you can't discount the amount of product research that goes into the stuff that we end up actually building and shipping on a day-to-day basis. So a lot of times, not that you have idle engineers sitting around, but like there's amount of waiting and going back and forth and communicating between figuring out what the hell you're actually going to build before you even build it. And at the enterprise level, the stakes for doing that the right way first are really, really high. I think the force multiplier that you could apply here, though, is like in A/B testing. So all enterprise software does massive amounts of A/B testing to figure out what's the best way to get that extra penny of revenue or whatever it is that whatever metric you're indexing against. And so for us, it might take a while to spin up an ABCD test with 3 or 4 different variants, but with some level of AI involvement, we could probably have 20 different variants much quicker, given your code is written in a way that supports AI to come in and like attach itself to it. Right now, a lot of these old systems that are built, like even us today at Match Group, like I would say there's a lot of code that's written in a way like pre-AI. If you were to start a new business today from scratch, the code that you would write would probably look a lot differently if you wanted AI to work with it easier. Like it probably wouldn't follow the most best practices because you have to feed everything to AI to give it the context to understand what it needs to build. And so I think that there's probably going to be a wave of software that's going to look much different than previous software has looked, just so AI can interact with it more efficiently.
That makes sense.
Makes sense.
Is so I guess, I mean, on the enterprise level, things naturally move at a different, I mean, there's more involved, right? Like, because not only do you build all those different tests, like you explained, all those different versions of like one feature or one part of a feature or whatever, but you have to decide what users see what feature, right? And or what version of the test, you know what I mean? Like, and there's probably a whole bunch of research that goes into like, okay, this cohort based on these metrics in their usage is going to get this version of this, and maybe there's individual versions of like or A, B, C for just that specific cohort, and you have to make all those decisions, right?
Building those data sets, there's definitely a lot that goes into it. Metros, previous actions, things that you think these people might be doing or might be likely to do. There's a lot of machine learning that's already going into that and making those decisions, though. Like I think most large companies that have robust data science teams are spending a lot of time figuring out who the right people to expose things are to, because ultimately what you're going to do is make a decision for your business that could make a huge impact on not just revenue or whatever bottom line metric you're looking at, but also like trust. You want people to like the product that you're building. And so that's also super important. So you want to make sure that whatever you're testing to whatever metro is going to be something that you can expand out across your entire user base. So like, if I run a test in, I don't know, give me a random city.
Columbus, Ohio.
I might be missing something that's super important that those people in Columbus just doesn't adhere to people in Los Angeles or New York or wherever else. And so there's a lot of work that goes into making sure you're testing the right thing with the right folks.
Yeah, dude. I mean, this is super interesting. We're out of time here, but like, I think I could just talk about this stuff all the time. I think this stuff's super cool, and it's very of the times. Everyone's talking about this, so it's gonna be interesting. Let's talk about it again next week.
I'm in.
All right. Thanks, Garrett. Thanks, Jake.
Yeah.
We'll see everybody next week.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys. See ya.